Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk to you today about Melbourne's Royal Children's Hospital recently announcing that they will be offering gender-affirming care for children as young as 3 years old. It seems, no matter what, the weaponization of our culture and the indoctrination of our children will continue down this repugnant path of destruction. We seem to be headed down a very slippery slope that we may not be able to come back out of. In an era where some parents seek to imprint their radical political ideologies on children who are just beginning to grasp basic concepts like counting and reading. Gender affirmation care, for those of you who don't know, is a soft and fluffy whitewashed term for the so-called treatment of gender dysphoria. In order to give you a more legal and medical definition, this is what Sydney University claims it is. Be sure to read through the lines of the various layers of indoctrination that eventually leads to irreversible genital mutilation and hormonal system shutdown. Quote, social affirmation may include coming out, clothing, voice and names and pronouns. Medical affirmation may include, but is not limited to, surgery and/or hormone therapy. Legal affirmation may include, but is not limited to, name and gender change on documents, unquote. I was actually considering doing a deep dive and discussion on all of the consequences as a result of these surgeries. Point to the various studies which indicate its failure in improving mental health, and the various complications that can arise from these forms of treatment in minors, which is now very well documented, so much so that many lawmakers all around the world are starting to actually roll back a lot of these more invasive and perverse implementations of gender affirmation treatment. But I don't think I need to do that. I don't think I need to show you the before and after photos or the countless testimonials of those who now live in regret. If you wish to find these things for yourself, I'd encourage it. Something like that is probably best kept off YouTube anyway. For those of you who don't know the history of sexual revolution and gender ideology, and how it was historically used as a political weapon, and how the normalization of depravity and open hypersexuality has impacted culture, I highly recommend reading a book called Libido Dominandi by Dr. E. Michael Jones, which highlights the history and influence sexual liberation and degeneracy has had, as well as gender ideology and feminism used as a political weapon. In a post-modernist society, it's generally thought that the liberation of sexuality is a moral pursuit and a road to freedom when nothing could be further from the truth. As it turns out, the more open and radical your sexuality becomes, the more you will burn in your lust and be ensnared by it. Consider the addiction many have to pornography, where those who refrain from this activity actually truly have liberation because they are not a slave to the pull of that addiction. It's simple, really. You can't become a junkie if you never take drugs. It's almost like the Bible was right when it was telling us to be modest. With that being said, I wanted to show you a post made by the United Nations on Twitter today. According to the United Nations, there is no justification for female genital mutilation. Quote, 1 in 4 survivors have undergone female genital mutilation by a health worker. We must say no to #FGM in all forms, including the medicalization of this harmful practice, unquote. Isn't this in stark contrast to some of the stuff that we are dealing with today? Very interesting. Liberal Senator Claire Chandler has voiced concerns over the idea that children as young as 3 can now access the treatment for gender-affirming care.
Oh, I think it's absolutely crazy that this is happening in Australia, while everywhere else in the world, the ways in which children with gender dysphoria are being treated is under the microscope and being reviewed consistently. And in many instances, the gender affirming model, the model that by which a child's gender identity is affirmed rather than their biological sex, this model is being rolled back in other jurisdictions overseas because there have been independent reviews, there have been inquiries, and they have found that these models aren't necessarily providing the best possible outcomes to young children. So once again, I find it absolutely staggering that we are living in a country where, frankly, people have their heads in the sand about this. No one wants to be looking at this issue. No one wants to be talking about this issue. As we know, overseas, when there have been inquiries and there have been reviews, these affirmative care models aren't working.
There is not any information that I could find on the official website for the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne, but from what I can ascertain, from the information I was able to find, puberty blockers and the use of hormone replacement drugs will not be issued until the early stages of puberty, which in girls is between the ages of 10 and 14. For boys, between the ages of 12 and 16. And if you talk to any gym bro out there who knows anything about the use of testosterone, certain steroids and other diuretics, it can impact you for the rest of your life, leave irreversible damage and end up with a complete shutdown of your hormonal system, leaving you dependent on a lifetime of hormonal replacement therapy and drugs. Sometimes the damage can be irreversible. By the age of 16, surgeries are generally sought out. An age when children are not old enough to vote, can't be trusted with an open license for a motor vehicle or own a firearm, but apparently is old enough to make genital mutilations after many years of indoctrination. I personally think people should get in contact with the people who run this private-public partnership business that is the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne. Give them some feedback and let them know how you feel. Most of these people are reachable via contact options they themselves make public. There's Bernadette McDonald, the CEO, Sandy Bell, the Executive Director Strategist, Tom Connell, the Executive Director, Medical Services and Chief Medical Officer, and Andrew Gay, the Chief Financial Officer. Yes, Andrew Gay, that's right. Obviously, it's a pretty controversial subject and a lot of people have opinions about this, but it's becoming more obvious to me that a lot of this is purely driven by the ambitions and politics of overbearing narcissistic parents most of the time. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Be sure to like, comment your thoughts below, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video around on social media. Until next time.